Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, June 10th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a video to take a look at some of the states that were pretty much swing states in the 2020 election. It's going to be covering all of the battleground states that I personally think are truly battleground states for 2020. Rather than what the media would like to present you, I'm going to go ahead and show you the states that I truly believe are the most competitive ones and the ones that I think the campaigns are going to be strictly focused on. This video was suggested from a member named Patrick from Canada. He was a member, a part of my channel, who just recently joined. Actually, I just introduced it a couple of days ago, so that really makes sense. But if you're wondering what I'm talking about, essentially, I have a whole rank system on my YouTube channel. I had the little join button next to my subscriber tab. It pretty much explains it all. If you click on it, it's about a 3-minute video. So if you have some time, go ahead and check it out. And there are some certain perks that allow you to request a video. So I'm doing this one. And it also just so happens to work really well with the overall 2020 election scheme. And I think that it will be very informative for a lot of you guys. And also, again, this was requested by a member. So it's something that I really think is worth doing. Taking a look at the overall electoral map, a lot of the time, a lot of these states are just going to stay the same. A lot of these states have voted the same since the year 2000. And I think that it is important to note that some of these states that may have been swing states or have voted the same since the year 2000 are swing states now. For example, Texas, which has voted with the Republican Party for a very long time. The last time it went to a Democrat was Jimmy Carter. And that was literally in the 70s. So about 50 years have passed, and we still don't see the Democratic Party winning here. And it is very possible for the Democratic Party to win in Texas now. It wasn't 10 years ago. It wasn't 20 years ago. But all of a sudden, the electoral map has shifted. So we are going to talk about some of these swing states. A lot of the states that I'm going to leave actually now in the gray toss-up may actually be considered for either side of the aisle. Just because of the fact that I'm considering it as a toss-up does not necessarily mean that I truly believe it is going to be a toss-up. I do like to address the states that the media and the campaigns, whether or not they're actually super invested or just saying they're super invested, for cases such as Virginia for the Trump campaign or Texas for the Biden campaign. A lot of these states are going to end up voting and are going to be pretty solid for a specific candidate, and we pretty much already know that. The reason why I do cover it is because I do like to go a little bit more in depth in states that aren't considered safe outright, but I will say that there are some battleground states that are going to be crucial to both campaigns in their victories, and realistically, some of these states just aren't going to be competitive for the other side as much as people would like them to be. Now, when we take a look at this electoral map, there's 231 quote-unquote toss-up electoral votes. But in terms of the overall battleground states themselves, there are only, not necessarily a handful, but not as many as you might think. Taking a look at this electoral map, this is pretty much based off the fact that Donald Trump is right now on a pathway to losing his election. Unfortunately for him, his own comments are going to be his own defeat. Joe Biden is doing nothing different than what he's been doing during the primary season. He's pretty much been keeping a level head, and the only time you ever think about Joe Biden is when the news media says, shows that Joe Biden did something dumb. And, realistically, that doesn't happen as often as you might think. And just because you're hearing one comment about Joe Biden saying, you're not black if you vote for Trump, and then Donald Trump saying shoot protesters the next day, you know which story the media is going to cover. And unfortunately for the Trump campaign, it's day after day that he's making these comments, whether it's calling a 75-year-old man and tying him into some conspiracy theory, which this is not a part of my, personal beliefs. It sort of is. So, I will say, I truly believe that Donald Trump should not be making these type of comments. Obviously, we know what's happening nationwide. These protests are getting very bad in terms of the treatment from the police, and that's the main purpose of the overall protests themselves. And I do think that it is very horrible that, the president of the United States is accusing literally an old man of being involved in a conspiracy theory, in being involved of falling in front of the police for a publicity stunt. Whether you personally believe that or not, he shouldn't have said it. He should not have put that out on Twitter, because you only know that it's going to hurt his chances. Donald Trump has pretty much been the only reason the Democratic Party has had increased turnout in the midterm elections. A lot of their campaign was bent on impeaching Trump, defeating Trump's policies. Now in 2020, defeating Trump, getting him out of the White House. Sure, it may be, a little illogical to pursue that as they proceed through future elections, but right now they are putting Donald Trump as enemy number one nationwide, and it's working. The mainstream media is covering numerous things that Trump is saying, and a lot of these battleground states that were battleground states in 2016 are not so much in 2020. A lot of these states have taken a turn in favor of the Democratic Party, and you know that the Democratic Party is going to have a pretty solid margin of victory in these states. The states I'm talking about are states such as New Mexico and Colorado. These are two states that, maybe have been close in recent elections. The last time New Mexico went to the GOP, and Colorado, actually, 2004. The Republican Party has yet to carry Colorado and New Mexico in any pretty much recent elections. And the reasoning for that is, number one, the states have progressed further to the Democratic Party. Sure, they may have shifted a little bit rightward from Obama's elections, but Obama was a one-in-a-lifetime type candidate. He was the first African-American president, and I will say that both of these states had very large margins for him because he had a very much landslide election. Now, looking at 2018 and all of the special elections in between, Colorado, New Mexico, and Virginia, might I add the 2017 governor election and elections between 2017 and now, have all shown that these states have taken a very leftward turn. Now, for Virginia, I will say that this state, again, this was a solid GOP stronghold. Barack Obama had a very large victory, but it wasn't really supposed to be super competitive in Virginia. This was won by Bush. Bill Clinton couldn't even carry the state despite carrying numerous southern states. So it was very surprising that all of a sudden Northern Virginia had drastically shifted away. I mean, sure, it was tied for a very long period of time. The Republican Party sometimes edged out Northern Virginia, but now it has become pretty much the Democratic epicenter in the state itself. They control Virginia politics because, number one, there's the most people there, but number two, they pretty much ignore the rest of Southern Virginia in terms of their Republican identity. And I will say that makes Virginia very much a solid Democratic state. I can definitely see increased turnout. And even if there isn't, Virginia goes to the Democrats on the backs of white voters. This isn't a case of minority turnout. Sure, it is crucial for Democrats to get a lot of the minority vote out, but in states such as Virginia and states such as New Hampshire, which I'm actually going to characterize for Joe Biden, I will say that Virginia and New Hampshire, a lot of the Democratic vote is on the backs of white voters. Yes, minority turnout helps, but Donald Trump himself is turning away the actually more wealthier and just overall more affluent, whiter community, that the suburban moms, all of those people that were living, right on the outskirts of D.C. that previously were conservatives or John McCain, Mitt Romney voters, but Donald Trump has pretty much pushed them away. But that's not to say that there aren't some other battleground states that Donald Trump may have won in some of these states by larger margins than Hillary Clinton's margin of victory in states such as Virginia, New Hampshire, Colorado, New Mexico. But again, the landscape has changed, and Donald Trump is pushing away more Republican voters, and Joe Biden is gaining more independent and Democratic voters. As we take a look across the United States, states such as Florida and, Nevada and Arizona and Georgia and North Carolina, these are all states that we traditionally would classify as battleground states recently. But I will say that a lot of these states, again, used to be Republican strongholds. Arizona, absolutely. North Carolina, absolutely. Georgia, Florida. I mean, these are states that, sure, they went to Democrats in some elections. Obama won Florida. Al Gore almost won Florida. Bill Clinton won Florida once. And, of course, Donald Trump won all of these states except for Nevada in 2016. But Georgia and Arizona have been pretty, or at least recently new to the overall electoral landscape. These two states were previously Republican strongholds, and I will say that the Democratic Party has done a very good job at pretty much moving this state. It was a combination of Donald Trump, number one, pushing away a lot of those Mitt Romney and John McCain voters that were pretty solid in these states, and also increased minority involvement in these areas. If you take a look at the demographic shifts around the country, Arizona is growing. I think actually Phoenix, Arizona is the largest growing city in the country, fastest growing city in the country. Georgia itself is getting a huge influx of minority just voters, I guess, in the sense that we're talking about elections from the Rust Belt and from other parts of the country, North Carolina included. Florida is getting a lot as well. So these states definitely are going to be battlegrounds in 2020 and likely could take further shifts in favor of the Democratic Party as we progress through future elections. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, states that I talk about all the time, mainly because these were the states that were broken through by Donald Trump. They're absolutely going to be battleground states in 2020, and this will probably be where the Biden and Trump campaigns will be spending most of their money and almost all of their campaign rallies. Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. 3 states that hadn't gone to the GOP in roughly 30 years. For one of the states, 24 years. But again, over 2 decades have passed, and these states finally flipped for a candidate that was thought to have lost this election by a pretty substantial margin. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. These are all states that are actually won by Donald Trump by less than 1%. I will say that I am pretty surprised that the Biden campaign hasn't put forward more of an effort in these states already, but I don't think that they're going to completely neglect the states themselves. Joe Biden's primary victories in these states are also pretty surprising. Hillary Clinton, she was only able to get Pennsylvania out of the three. And I will say that a primary will not always reflect in general election turnout nor a general election victory. Take West Virginia, for example. There were more Democratic votes in the primary, but obviously Donald Trump had a very sound victory in West Virginia, winning, I believe, every single county, despite Hillary Clinton's husband, Bill Clinton, winning it twice. But Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, they have a very similar demographic, very low African-American population, 6.7% in Wisconsin, which is actually why it's probably the closest of them all. But again, they all share a very similar quality. They voted for Trump in 2016, but all less than 1%. And Joe Biden is now polling very well in these states. And sure, you may not necessarily trust the polls from the media for whatever reason. I mean, I can respect and understand that you may be a little skeptical, especially after 2016. But I will say that any type of data that shows Joe Biden with a larger lead than what Hillary Clinton got should be a warning sign. Because Hillary Clinton, sure, was leading in Michigan by 3%, but if Biden's starting to lead by 8% and Trump only won by 0.27% of the vote in Michigan, all of a sudden that 5% increase for Biden could very well trounce that 0.27% victory in Michigan. So while, sure, the polls may have been mildly off in 2016 in these three states specifically, Joe Biden is drastically outperforming Hillary Clinton's numbers in these states, except for the case in Wisconsin, but again, that's a discussion for another video. Texas is brand new to the Battleground scheme. Sure, in 2016, we talked about it very briefly. Not me personally. I didn't have a YouTube channel in 2016, but the media did, because Texas had recently shown data that showed Trump ahead by 3% or by 6% or 9%. On election day, he was leading by 12%, ended up winning by 9%. So the polls were mildly inaccurate, but still predicted a Donald Trump victory in Texas. Now, the data goes back and forth. Joe Biden led in one poll by 1%, Trump leads by 1%, and then there's a tie. So essentially, the overall net is 0. It's a tied state right now, and it is pretty important to note that Texas was inaccurate in favor of the Democratic Party in 2016. The Democratic Party outperformed their polling data by 3% in Texas. If it's a tied race right now, what could that say for 2020? I'm not saying that Texas isn't going to go to the GOP, but what I'm saying is Texas, with the right amount of attention from the Biden campaign, will probably end up going to we'll still probably end up going to Donald Trump, but definitely will be a lot closer than Virginia, than New Hampshire, than Colorado, than New Mexico. Now, I understand that this map can change. The battleground states definitely can and will change as we progress through the election season. If Trump starts to regain his polling numbers, the first state that I would flip back to the Republican column is Texas. But right now, Donald Trump, again, alienating a number of Republican voters, a number of top Republican officials saying they will not vote for Donald Trump. For the Democratic Party, they are gaining a number of voters and also increased minority turnout nationwide, not just in particular states. And again, we are following a trend off what we saw in 2018 that led to the Democratic Party's victory in the House of Representatives and an 8-point lead nationwide. So while Texas may be a battleground state, I'm actually going to say Minnesota is not. Now, I understand there may be some speculation about that. However, Barack Obama won Indiana around the same margin that Hillary Clinton won Minnesota. But that's not to say that Donald Trump all of a sudden is going to carry Minnesota. It's not historically a Republican state. In fact, it's the state that has voted with the Democratic Party for the longest streak. It is the only state that did not vote for Ronald Reagan in 1984, which means that Minnesota is the last standing Democratic state in this country. And sure, Donald Trump did narrow it up in 2016, but as you can see, he's losing a lot of his support from 2016. He's losing a lot of the approval from 2016. Voters that didn't vote in 2016, mainly minority voters, are expected to turn out in 2020. All of these signs indicate that the Democratic Party is going to expand their leads in states they already had solidified. The only reason why I could see Nevada narrowing up is because the Trump and Republicans really like to focus on that state itself. I think they're going to focus a lot of money into that 3rd district in the House of Representatives. And I also think that the Trump campaign, for whatever reason, will focus on it enough to maybe narrow it down less than 5%. But I still think that Joe Biden has a pretty solid chance at Nevada. But I will say, out of all the states here, I'm actually more comfortable saying Arizona goes to the Democrats than Nevada at this point for a number of reasons. I may not have said the same thing a month ago, but taking a look at the recent data we have right now, it doesn't look good for the GOP in Arizona. But I'm not going to consider any of these states that we're flipping not battleground, because even if I think that Arizona may go to Joe Biden, I'm not going to take that out of the battleground possibility, because Donald Trump did carry it in 2016. This leaves three states and one district. Nebraska's second district and Iowa and Ohio, I truly think are going to be battlegrounds. As much as I like to characterize them as red straight off the bat, I still think that Joe Biden is going to focus a lot of his time there. Again, we're working with the same type of demographic that we see across the entire Rust Belt. Whether or not you consider Iowa as a part of the Rust Belt, again, they still are working with the mainly the mainly white population. And these are also areas that Barack Obama did pretty well in back in 2008 and 2012. While Joe Biden may not be Barack Obama, and I don't think that their campaign tactics are, that similar, I do think that Joe Biden is going to unlock a number of people that voted for Obama in 2012 and that were pretty comfortable with him being in office. A lot of them that didn't necessarily like Hillary Clinton were very anti-Hillary Clinton that may not be so much anti-Joe Biden. Joe Biden's approval rating is a lot higher than Donald Trump's right now. And when we're talking about a presidential election, Joe Biden doesn't have any real responsibilities right now, but he's already served in the White House. It's not like you're taking someone who could be considered inexperienced. And while Donald Trump definitely did have that label back in 2016, Hillary Clinton's experience was pretty much a negative part of her campaign. Her tenure as Secretary of State, her serving as the United States Senator in New York. There were numerous comments that she made back in 2006. There were a number of things that she did as Secretary of State that were all liabilities to her. Joe Biden really can't say the same. The same people that wanted to continue Obama's legacy in these states in 2012 are likely going to be pretty comfortable voting for someone like Joe Biden. While I do think Donald Trump right now has the edge in Iowa and Ohio, I will say that Joe Biden has a realistic shot. I don't think Trump has a realistic shot at Minnesota. I don't think he has a realistic shot at Colorado, nor do I in Virginia, and don't even get me started about New Mexico. New Hampshire, there were a number of things that Trump said about New Hampshire, and a lot of them are going to play in loop. Just because it was 3 years ago does not mean the Democratic Party won't use it. They have used clips from him in the 90s, in the 2000s, so don't put it past them, and it will 100% look very negative to him once you start seeing them come out. But Maine at large, I do see going pretty solidly to Joe Biden. Again, Trump may have gotten close in 2016, but these were very solid for Obama. I mean, nearly 20-point margins in 2012. So yes, it was a drastic shift, but again, a lot of it was anti-Hillary Clinton. Not a lot of it was pro-Donald Trump. A lot of those last-minute voters that had said, I was voting for Hillary, now I'm voting for Trump because of the recent things that came to light within the last 2 weeks of the campaign, the email scandal bringing back up Benghazi, a number of things that had happened, WikiLeaks, a combination of numerous factors that Hillary Clinton eventually lost the presidency. A lot of those things Joe Biden does not carry with him. While I think that Maine at large will go to Joe Biden, obviously the first district will, I think the second district is 100% in play. Now, obviously, this map can change, and this map is really based off the fact that Joe Biden is doing very well and Donald Trump is not. Simple. Just because Joe Biden right now leads in terms of the overall electoral vote margin, we still have 187 battleground electoral votes, which means that this map can be written so many different ways. But right now, Joe Biden is the favorite for the presidency, which also points to the reason why a lot of these states that were close in 2016, but Hillary Clinton ended up winning it. If Donald Trump's losing support from 2016, there is no possibility for him to carry it in 2020. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please consider joining as a member on my channel, and then you can request a video like this, I believe for the second rank and above, but there's only 3, so it's really not that serious. But again, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all later today.